It's been 1.5 years since we have heard this news that Manipur is burning. There is a chaotic situation in Manipur. The public law and order system has relatively collapsed or is not in a condition where we can say that Manipur is peaceful. And it's been 1.5 years. And now we are observing one news related to the same, which says that Armed Forces Special Powers Act is now going to be imposed in few areas of Manipur. So this is an important news, I can say. Armed Forces Special Powers Act is very important act which gives very much special powers to the armed forces or military personnel, right? So hi, welcome to Narayana Academy Daily News Analysis. Here we are going to discuss the most important articles from The Hindu and Indian Express and we'll analyze them in detail. These are the 5 articles for today. The first article, as I told you, is related to Armed Forces Special Powers Act being implemented in the areas of Manipur. Second article is related to Nigeria. Now, Prime Minister Modi is going for a visit to Nigeria, which is an African country. And India-African relations are very important for us, specifically to understand that Africa can be a really good partner in terms of Global South. Then the third article, this one is related to non-compliance or the what we call it as the environmental compliance required by the industries. So there has been some exemption given by government to some industries. These industries are called white category industries. So we'll understand what exactly it is. Then fourth article, climate change and trade. Now, we have been hearing this news related to climate change because there is conference of parties, that is COP meeting is going on. So we have been hearing this news. Now this time we are going to discuss about a border tax mechanism, a kind of a tax which is implemented by European Union. That we'll discuss in this. And then the last article is related to DRDO, who has successfully announced that they have conducted the trial of Pinaka rocket system. So these are the 5 articles for today. So let's start with the first article of the day. I'm talking about Manipur specifically. I'm talking about AFSPA as an act. Now, those who think that whether this act is very important or it's an average act, I'll say it's one of the most important acts for you to study. See, this topic is important for prelims as well as mains, specifically as part of internal security. Here you can look at this previous year question to understand the importance of this topic. Human rights activists constantly highlight the fact that the Armed Forces Special Powers Act 1958, that is AFSPA in short, is a draconian act leading to cases of human rights abuses by security forces. What sections of AFSPA are opposed by the activists? Critically evaluate the requirements with reference to the view held by Apex Court or Supreme Court simply. So they are asking about your view, the Supreme Court's view, asking you to actually critically evaluate whether we should have such a law called AFSPA or we should remove this particular act. Somewhat this mechanism has to be understood in detail. Now, let's go in detail to understand what's actually happening. What is the recent news? Central government has recently reimposed AFSPA in some areas of Manipur. Now, these areas include 6 police station areas of Manipur. Now, this is being reimposed. That means it was earlier imposed. So, if you look at entire Northeast, most of the areas of Northeast, already we had AFSPA being implemented over there. But with time, government tried to remove or withdraw this AFSPA implementation. So, if you look at the year 2022-2023, in this time period, we actually removed this AFSPA provision or the AFSPA being implemented in Manipur. But what happened after this, after 2022-2023, especially in this year, what happened? We saw a big crisis in Manipur and the situation is not at all stable. And in this particular act, AFSPA, the area is declared as disturbed area. When it is disturbed area, when it is declared as disturbed area, then you can send your military and that military will have immense power under this particular act. So we are talking about armed forces who are going to get special powers. Now understand the history of it, how this act actually came into picture. So if you go back to history in the times of British era, we saw that Indian freedom struggle, which continued for a very long time, it included many movements against British Raj. So earlier we heard about non-cooperation movement. After that we heard about civil disobedience movement. But the last movement was Quit India movement. Now this movement is very important because after this there is no movement. After that Britain had to leave India simply and we got the independence. But if you look at this movement, at that point of time, the scenario was very much chaotic. There was chaos. So anyone was attacking anyone. More or less we are saying that Indians were attacking Britishers. So if you look at the government system, it was more or less simply similar to what is happening to Manipur right now. It seems very much chaotic, unstable. Similar was the case over here at the time of Quit India movement. So at that time, the British government decided to bring an ordinance through which they gave some extra powers to their armed forces, that is their military. And this military or armed forces were supposed to control this region. They have to ensure peace and stability in this region. So they needed special powers. Why? They could do anything. For example, they want to arrest someone without any warrant, they can do that. They want to fire and kill anyone, they can do that. Such extra special powers were given under this ordinance. Now, what happened after independence? Although Indians were of the view that we'll not have such draconian law after independence in India. But you see, after independence, we faced some problems. First, we saw the partition in the Kashmir region, or what we call as the Pakistan, formation of Pakistan. Then, after that, we saw insurgency in the region of Northeast. The term insurgency simply means that there are people who do not agree with this political system we have, and they have gone for a rebellion. They have become rebel. They are not ready to accept your system. They want their sovereignty, or they are not ready to accept the government system or the system of India. They are saying we don't want to stay with you. So such insurgent groups started developing. So in the form of some militias, some kind of, you can even call some of them as terrorist organizations. And this started happening specifically in the northeastern part of India, that is this region. So here, to bring some stability in northeast, to ensure that this region remains peaceful, government of India in the year 1958 introduced this act called Armed Forces Special Powers Act. It is very similar to what the ordinance was brought in by British government at that point of time earlier, right? Now under this particular act, the implementation of this act is done by Ministry of Home Affairs, and under this, armed forces will be given some special powers. Now, this is implemented, but in this act, you will declare some area as disturbed, and there you can implement this AFSPA. So these areas can differ. So let's say today government has decided to bring this region into AFSPA. Tomorrow they can withdraw also. They can decide later on this region will be under AFSPA. So you see, earlier even Assam, which was earlier means this act was being implemented over there. Even in Punjab, it was being implemented for some point of time. But later on, it was removed from Punjab. It was in Tripura also, but later on it was removed from Tripura. So these things keep on happening. Now the point is, currently this AFSPA is in enforcement or is being implemented in Assam, Manipur, Arunachal Pradesh and Nagaland, 4 states of India. Now what exactly happens? What are the key provisions mentioned specifically under AFSPA? First of all, you're going to declare an area as disturbed area, and we want this disturbed area to become peaceful. But which area will be called as disturbed area? Well, the area where the normal civilian government is not in a position to handle the situation. And to handle the situation, the police cannot handle it. That's why we need military. We need military. Maybe there are some terrorists, maybe the people are not listening, whatever is the situation. The police cannot handle, so we need armed forces. And here, who can declare this area as disturbed area? There are 3 authorities. One is our central government, another one is the governor of a state, or third is the administrator of a union territory. All of these can declare any area as disturbed area in India. After that, this AFSPA will come into picture. Now, there is section 4 of this AFSPA which gives special powers to armed forces. First power, that they can search without warrant. Any army personnel can go in this region and search. They can come to your home also and they search without any warrant. Then they can destroy any particular property on their own. Let's say they think that there's a terrorist sitting over here, there's a person who can cause chaos in the society, so they can go ahead and put grenades or use their forces to destroy the property. Then they can arrest you without any warrant. They will detain you. Now after the arrest, they have to give it to the local police station, but at least they can arrest. That's a big thing. Then they can even open fire. Now this is the toughest thing to look at. That means an army personnel can directly shoot and kill any person if they want to, and then they will be protected from any prosecution in future. So in future, if you go ahead and try to sue, file a case against this army officer, nothing is going to happen, because Armed Forces Special Powers Act gives them this power to even kill anybody. Now you please understand, why do we need such a law? The reason is, we want stability. Stability is the first thing that government or the system needs to ensure. After stability, all other things will come into picture. So this is the act. Now there are many people who argue that AFSPA should be there in India, but there are some people who say it should not be there. So let's understand their arguments. First, those who support it. They say that the security challenge in India that exists, that is very much important for us to deal with. So when you're dealing with terrorist or insurgent groups, you need to ensure that armed forces have these powers. If they will be having fear in their mind that in future someone will file a case against them, how can they operate freely in that region? How can they operate or function smoothly in that region? So to ensure security of the region, we need such law. Then when a conflict zone is there, you have to, your first priority is to bring peace in that area, and you need to empower, that means give extra power to the armed forces. There were police also, they could not handle it, that's why you went for the military. So definitely you need additional power to be given to them. Then they will act without fear because of the legal protection. And last point is, there is constitutional validity. See, this act was even said by Supreme Court that it is a valid act, it is actually required. So interestingly, this is the case. Naga People's Movement for Human Rights versus Union of India 1998. In this case, Supreme Court first of all said that it is constitutionally correct. Why? Because it is the state's prior responsibility to ensure stability. So they can go ahead with such act also. Apart from that, Supreme Court came up with some guidelines. They said that it doesn't mean that we have this law, so any military official will do whatever he or she wants to. No, there will be some regulation. So first of all, when you are declaring any area as disturbed area, this will not be for an indefinite period. See, some area of Manipur right now has been declared as disturbed area, but this does not mean that you will put Manipur in this disturbed area category for next 10 years, 50 years, 30 years. No, it will not happen. It will not go ahead for infinite time period. Rather, you have to, that means government has to review this issue periodically. They have to review AFSPA periodically. After few time, after few months or few years, they have to recheck. Then second thing, they have to use minimal force possible. See, don't go for using military force very high in number, because when you use such number of military force, then many other people will die. Even civilians might die. This can create more chaos in terms of that crisis increasing again. So use minimal forces. And then whenever central government is declaring any area as disturbed area, they should try to consult the state government also. All these are guidelines given by Supreme Court to the central government. Clear? Now, there are some people who argue against Armed Forces Special Powers Act. They say, first of all, what about states' autonomy? You see, if you look at Schedule 7 of the Constitution, There are union list, state list, concurrent list. Now, if you look at state list, which shows that what power is there with the state governments or the state legislature, executive, etc. So you will see law and order is part of this state list. But even after that, suddenly central government can declare an area as disturbed area and get into this area. So where is the autonomy or the power of state governments? And center many a times does not even consult state governments. They directly enter into it. They directly declare one area as disturbed area. So there is some conflict between state and center also, right? Then second is excessive use of force. We talked about this. That when we use more force, which is not even required, then there will be civilian casualties. And in case, because of a military personnel, if a normal civilian is died, then the situation which was already very chaotic, that further becomes more chaotic. The issue further escalates. That's why we want to ensure that it should not be there. This is the argument. Then what about our fundamental rights? In India, we have fundamental rights. So if you look at Article 21, it says right to life and personal liberty. So when you are bringing such AFSPA, you are detaining anyone on your choice, you are killing anyone on your choice. What about the right to life of that person? Then when you detain someone, when you arrest someone, what about the freedom of movement, which is under Article 19? So these fundamental rights are violated. This is why we should not have AFSPA. That is the argument. Then what about accountability? An armed force personnel, what about his accountability? If he is killing anybody or doing whatever act, then who is going to bring them to accountability? That is a question. Look at these issues from the perspective of human right violations. See, there was a report brought by Hegde Commission, and they have provided one document through which they try to substantiate or give evidence of killings done by military personnel. These are called extrajudicial killings, and they tried to show that because of Armed Forces Special Powers Act, which gives extra power or special immunity to armed forces, they are many of the officers are misusing this power. So this was shown by this report. And even the last argument is, what about international law? Because this act completely violates international law. For example, this Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which gives priority to human rights, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. So this law goes against it. So these people will say we should not have this particular act, right? Now, there are some recommendations given by some committees. We need to know that. First, this committee called Jeevan Reddy Committee of year 2004. They clearly said that this is not a good law at all. We should directly repeal Armed Forces Special Powers Act. Now, what we can do additionally is that some provisions of AFSPA can be added or integrated into another law. This law is UAPA, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act 1967. So if we bring into it, then we can completely remove Armed Forces Special Powers Act. That was one of the solutions. Other thing is, we should bring in grievance redressal mechanism. Let's say due to an army person, something wrong happened with a civilian. Then that civilian or an innocent person should have a grievance redressal mechanism. That means they can come to the government with their grievances or their problems and government can sort it out. Such mechanism should be there, right? Then we have second ARC, that is Administrative Reforms Commission, which in 2007 said that we should completely remove Armed Forces Special Powers Act. We should not have such act in India at all. Rather, India should go for more humane approach. So they are directly recommending we should not have any such provision. Don't even add it in UAPA as such. And the third one, which is Santosh Hegde Commission, they said that we should review this AFSPA every 6 months. So if you have applied it in a region, then check it whether it is applicable in a right way or not. And entire AFSPA and its provisions should also be reviewed again and again. And we need to ensure accountability of these officers. And we should have a transparent mechanism through which we can understand what is exactly happening in that region. So this is said by Santosh Hegde Commission. Now overall, If we have to say what should be our view, first thing is that fundamental rights, human rights are very, very important. So certainly that should be protected. And to protect that, whatever is required, we should do. But removing AFSPA completely will not solve the entire issue, because we know that we are vulnerable. There will be some issues, there will be some conflicts which we have to solve. And ensuring the basic stability is the job of the government. So they require such act through which they can come up with some extra powers. So we might require such powers, but only in the case of emergency. It should not be used again and again. So the role of judiciary can become important to put a check on the executive action. And yes, certainly it should be reviewed again and again. It should be ensured that the people over there are completely accountable towards the larger public. So these are the things we need to actually do. Clear? So now the time to check whether we have understood it or not. So look at this question. The re-imposition of AFSPA in the parts of Manipur highlights the ongoing debate over balancing national security with the protection of civil liberties. Critically discuss the need for AFSPA in addressing security challenges in the disturbed areas, and examine the arguments for and against its application with reference to judicial, administrative and civil recommendations for reforming the act. So overall, they are expecting you to show what are the security challenges specifically and give some advice, show the analysis, the arguments which are which support AFSPA, which are against AFSPA. All that you have to show. So when you start with the answer in the introduction, give a brief introduction about Armed Forces Special Powers Act, or you can talk about the current context related to Manipur. Then show them what is the need of AFSPA, because we have some security challenges. Those you can mention. Then mention why people are arguing against it. Those human right violations, states autonomy, etc. Then provide the information or recommendation given by some committees. And after that, you can put conclusion and give your view how you can solve this entire issue with a balanced approach by reforming AFSPA and by bringing accountability and transparency. This is how you write the entire answer. Okay. Now, this one article is done. Any doubt? No? Okay. Now the time for second article, which is related to Nigeria, and to be specific, related to Africa. And Africa is very important for us. From mains GS paper 2, we have bilateral and regional groupings, global groupings, agreements which involve India's national interest. Look at this previous year question. If the last few decades were of Asia's growth story, then the next few are expected to be Africa's. In the light of this statement, examine India's influence in Africa in recent years. So it's clearly asking about what India has done, what is India's influence in African region. Whatever we are doing, we have to show that. So you understand, Africa is important. Now, what is exactly happening? Why it is in news? Because Prime Minister Modi is going for a visit to Nigeria on November 16 and 17. Now, first of all, don't focus on Nigeria, focus on the entire continent of Africa. Please understand why Africa is important for India or India's national interest. First thing, there are a lot of natural resources in Africa. If you look at minerals, if you look at the minerals throughout the world, you will see that 30% of those minerals lie only in Africa. Then there are some gas fields, or we can call natural gas resources available. Crude oil is available. So all of this, when we look at it, we see that it is very important for us, for our economy. For example, if I talk about crude oil and natural gas, we are right now dependent on the region of Gulf, or the West Asia we call it. But that West Asia is very much unstable. Right now, Israel is at war with Hamas, and then Lebanon. Then there is a chance that even Iran may get involved in it. The crisis may become larger. So the problem is West Asia is very unstable. So it's better if we have other options available to buy our crude oil or natural gas. Then this Africa as a region can become very important to diversify our imports or oil supplies, right? Then apart from these energy supplies, you can even look at the entire market potential of this African region. See, the population of this entire Africa is somewhere around 1 billion. Now, if India can export its goods and services to this region, then you can serve the market of 1 billion. Their GDP, combined GDP is somewhere around 2.5 trillion. So somewhere India can export a lot of goods and products to this region. Economically, it can be a very good opportunity for us to have a good relation with Africa, right? Then Indian diaspora means the people who are there in Africa. There are many people who are right now working or they are living as a diaspora in African region in many countries of Africa. Now the history is very different. When the British time period was there, when Britain was controlling most of the parts of the world, especially India, at that point of time, many Indians were brought to Africa by these Britishers because there was a system called indentured labor. Indentured labor. What this system says that it is very similar to slavery system. So earlier there was slavery, but that slavery system was later on abolished. So after that, British, the company brought a new system of indentured labor, which says that we will bring some laborers from one area on a contract to another region. Let's say, for example, from India, they brought some people to African region on a contract. The contract could be for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, anything. Now, for that time period, they are going to pay for the let's say clothes or food or shelter, everything. For everything, the government will provide all these services and they will have to work in the field for the government. Now here they wanted to, British government wanted to do some plantation and all those activities in African region. So they brought Indians over there. Now most of those Indians were living there, they continued living there, and that's why even today we see many people living in African region. Even to add on to this, there are many Indian companies who are operating, working specifically in African region. And to talk about Nigeria specifically, it is said that Indian companies are second largest employment providers when it comes to Nigeria. That means India has a big role to play in African region. Then strategically it is very important. See, right now India is very much dependent on this region called Suez Canal. See, whatever trade we do with the entire world, most of our trade happens through this route. This route. So here we are moving towards then Europe. So if you look at this route, it involves Suez Canal. So if Suez Canal is blocked, then it will become very difficult for us to have trade with larger part of the world. So we look at this area and we see that this is the African region which is very near to this Suez Canal, right? This area is called as Horn of Africa. It looks like horn, that's why they call it Horn of Africa. So when we look at our strategic perspective, it seems that this region is very important for ensuring India's trade with other countries, right? Then the last point is related to our soft power. What is soft power? What is power? First of all, power is the ability to influence others, ability to influence the behavior of others. So let's say a country has power. So that power could be of two types, hard power and soft power. Hard power could be their military presence. Let's say America, they have got hard power. Certainly they have got hard power. They have substantial military, navy, etc. throughout the world. They can attack any country within a time span of half an hour. That is their hard power. But there is something called soft power also. That when you are very attractive, then people listen to you, people value you, people like to become like you. So if you look at America, they have also got soft power. That means people around the world want to become like America. Whatever America values, the other countries also start valuing it. So this is called soft power. Now, when it comes to India, because there are many Indians living in this region since a long time, we had very good cultural relation when it comes to India and Africa since the ancient time. So we say that we have a substantial proposition for this soft power in this region. Although we don't have our military presence in Africa, but at least soft power is there. People listen to us. Many times India on global forums talks about global south, talks about Africa. We have even included African Union in the G20. So when we do such acts, we are actually building our soft power in this region, right? Now look at the history, a brief history of India Africa relations. You see that the history goes back to ancient time period. In ancient times, there was a trade route, maritime trade route, which involved many goods were transported to Africa, many goods from Africa used to come to India. This used to happen, that was normal. So there was even cultural exchange between these two regions. So relations are historical. Then we see our Indian diaspora, which is now there, who was working there. So it is also important. That was a phase. And later on, there is an anti-colonial struggle which is very common with respect to Africa and India. The struggle which we saw in India against British power, similar struggles are there or have happened in the African region. So we share similar kind of history, right? So our interests are very much similar, we can say. Now, in the entire Africa, if we specifically talk about Nigeria, look at this. This is Africa, and here you will see Nigeria. Why Nigeria is important? First of all, if you look at entire Africa, the most populous country in Africa is Nigeria. First thing. Second, it is the second largest economy after Egypt in terms of PPP. Okay, purchasing power parity, GDP, second largest economy. Now, when we look at the things from India's perspective, we see that India is Nigeria's second largest trading partner. For Nigeria, India is very important. Second, there is natural gas, there is oil, crude oil. So India can invest in the infrastructure development of this natural gas and oil. So here we have opportunity. Then we import natural gas and oil, but also we can import other products. We can also export many other products. So we can diversify things. Then we can give some training to their defense forces. We can provide them some equipments. See, just like India has some internal security issues, even Nigeria has security issues. So we can help them with counter-terrorism operations, whatever equipments they require, everything can be provided, right? Now look at the picture from India-Africa relations from overall perspective, or we can say a big picture perspective. So you'll find some challenges in these relations. First challenge comes from the competition from other countries around the world. So it's not like only India is building good relations with Africa, others are also trying to build relations. So we have China, whose investment in this region is way more than India. So we are competing with China. And it's not like China only. USA, France, Britain, there are many other countries who are trying to invest in this region and they want substantial control of this region, right? So there is competition. That's a challenge for us. Second, when you look at economic engagement, whatever economic relationship we have, it is not that great, we can say. If you look at India's trade with entire world, when it comes to Africa, it is only 7%, 7.2% to be very specific. So we don't see that we are having very substantial trade as such with this. And even when we talk about Africa, it's not like we are having good trade with entire Africa. We are concentrating or focusing only on few countries like Egypt, Morocco, or Mauritius, etc. So we don't have a good relation in economic terms with the entire region. Then there is problem of infrastructure connectivity in the Africa itself. The infrastructure is not built, it is not yet developed completely. So even if you go for investing in it, there comes some kind of a challenge. And later on, even if India tries to build the infrastructure over there, there are some security issues. For example, there are issues of terrorism, piracy, some civil or political conflicts. Suddenly one organization will come up and say that we don't accept this government, we want our own government, some kind of civil war taking place. So many things are happening in this region. So because of these security concerns also, we are not able to build a really good relationship, right? And eventually, Africa's role has to be understood from a larger picture or larger game that exists in the entire world. That is the game of power or the building of global world order. So here, when it comes to India, India has an agenda. That agenda is called as agenda of global south. India wants that the world order should be established in such a way that the global south also has some say in it, some voice in it. So global south talks about south-south cooperation. Look at the global north. They are very much developed, and look at global south, they are very poor. They are not even developed. They are very much in a pathetic condition. So they should cooperate for the trade or connectivity or culture or all those things. They should cooperate. Then global governance institutions should be reformed. In the United Nations Security Council, there is nobody from Africa as a permanent member, right? So there should be some reform. This is said by India also, right? Then we should have sustainable development, and we should counter terrorism, extremism, etc. All this is part of India's global south agenda, and Africa is key part of it. Africa also completely supports India's agenda. So we are together going for these causes. So we can say India Africa relations is very important, and Nigeria being a big member of this Africa, so Nigeria is also very important. Clear? Now look at this question. Now I hope you can answer this question now. Analyze the challenges and opportunities in India's engagement with Africa. How can India enhance its role in Africa to promote mutual growth and development? Very straightforward and simple question. You start with the context that India-Africa relations are building up. We have historical ties, etc., etc. And then directly jump to this body part where you talk about the challenges. So the competition from China and all, the infrastructure gaps, security issues. Talk about the opportunities we have, what all can be done, and then at last conclude a way forward which is very optimistic. So this is how you can write the answer on this topic. Clear? So two topics are done. Third topic, a very small topic, and it's important from prelims perspective. So this is related to compliance. This is related to your Pollution, Water Prevention and Control Pollution Act. This act comes into picture when we talk about this compliance mechanism. So more or less this topic becomes more important for prelims than mains. But you will see some questions asked related to air quality in the mains paper. For example, this question. You can read this by pausing the video. So I'm trying to show you that pollution is an important topic and UPSC takes it seriously. Even we should take it seriously. Right? Now what is the context? So we have a central government ministry, Environment Ministry. That ministry has brought some changes in the regulatory mechanism. Those changes are related to some industries which are called as low polluting industries. There are some industries where we see very high emission of carbon dioxide, but there are some industries who are doing very less pollution, right? So these changes are brought in only for these industries who are not doing more pollution as such. Okay, now this is the news. Now first of all, what was happening and what has actually got changed? See, any industry that is there, they have to abide by the rules which are very important for conserving our environment. So what happens is that there should not be much pollution and all. For that, government brings some rules, and the industries have to comply by those rules. So sometimes they require some documentation, some clearance from the government side to even set up a project, right? So earlier it was required for companies to take two different clearances. One was called as environment clearance, another one is called as consent to establish, and this was from State Pollution Control Board. Now what happened is that now government found that there are some companies or some industries which are not doing much pollution as such. So putting such heavy compliance burden, first you need to take clearance from them, then from even state pollution board also, state pollution control board also. So this is very time consuming and very complex. So let's do one thing. will remove this clause completely. Even if they have this one clearance, that is enough. This is done only for one particular category of industry, and that category is called as white category. So look at all the industries in India. You can categorize these industries into four categories. Now this was categorized by Central CPCB, that is Central Pollution Control Board, in the year 2016. They said that if we look at the pollution done by every kind of industry, we can categorize them. So they brought an index, and through which they said that those who are doing the maximum pollution, that is called as red category. Okay, so their index was somewhere around 60 plus. Then second category will be orange category. Here they are doing somewhere around, their score is 41 to 59. Then the third category is green category. Their score is 21 to 40. And those who are below 20 are considered to be white category industries. They are not doing pollution as such. The pollution is very, very less. Now, which are those industries? If I have to give you some example, for example, solar cell manufacturing company or manufacturing industry. They are producing solar cells. It's a renewable energy thing. So they are not polluting the environment. Similarly, wind power units, similarly, fly ash brick manufacturing unit. All these are those industries which are not doing much pollution. We call them white category industry. And right now for this, government has said that you don't need to comply to these two different mechanisms. Just you should have environment clearance. That's it. Okay. Now look at this particular act called Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act. Now this act is very important, which was brought in the year 1974. Through this act we created CPCB and SPCB, Central Pollution Control Board at central level and State Pollution Control Board at state level. And it was their task to ensure that all the industries in our region are regulated. If there is one industry who is polluting more, who is putting the polluted elements in the nearby river or nearby well or anything, it is the job of CPCB and SPCB to regulate that industry, right? And this act was even amended in the year 2024, and that amendment gave extra power to the center over this state pollution control board, so they can even override the decisions of state pollution control board. So that's why we should know about this particular act. Clear? Now look at this question. With reference to Central Pollution Control Board, number 1, CPCB was constituted under the provisions of Water Prevention Control of Pollution Act 1974. Is it correct? 100% correct. Second, promoting the cleanliness of wells in the country is one of the objectives of CPCB. See, CPCB has to ensure that things are clean, obviously. So, yes, this is also correct. C will be the right answer for this. Now, the fourth article. Again, a very short article. You just need to understand it from the perspective of prelims. Okay. One mechanism is there which is called as Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, which is being discussed in the COP meeting. So look at the previous year question. The common carbon metric supported by UNEP had been developed for which reason? So such question can even be asked on this mechanism which we are going to discuss now. Now this name of this mechanism is Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, and this was brought in by European Union. Right now in the COP meeting, countries like India, countries like China, they are challenging this mechanism brought by European Union. They are saying that this is a trade barrier. This is not a good mechanism which you have brought. You should cancel it out. This is what they are saying, right? Now, let's understand what is this mechanism. We said that it was brought in by European Union. That was in the year of 2005. Now, this mechanism tries to prevent carbon leakage. You see what happens usually. Let's say in Europe, let's say any country of European Union. In European Union, there are very strict rules and regulations related to environment impact that may happen from industries. So if there is a company who is emitting carbon dioxide beyond a certain limit, that will be regulated, and there are very clear cut rules and very strict guidelines in European Union. So if there is a company who want to either buy something or let's say produce something, but for that the pollution can be very high, what the company will think, that in Europe, if we do this, what will happen, our cost will increase, government will put some punishment for us, so our production cost will increase. So what we'll do, we'll set up a company in other country, let's say in India, or we will buy those products from India. Instead of buying it from the European Union itself or producing here, we'll buy from India. Now, countries like India or any other countries of developing countries, we can say, there the rules are not that strict. So there won't be any punishment. So they can get the same product over here in a less price. So they will prefer to do that. But now European Union said, what's the use of our rules then? We made rules to ensure that industries reduce their carbon emissions. But now what industries are doing? Instead, they are buying products from other countries. So emission is not getting reduced. Rather, instead of the emission that could take place in Europe, that is taking place in India. That's it. So there is leakage of carbon. This term is being used to showcase this mechanism or this process, that carbon is getting leaked. So they said we are bringing one law, and this law will target some high emission sectors. So if there is any product being imported in Europe, and if that product is very high emitting, for example, there are some industries which emit carbon dioxide in very high number. For example, cement industry, steel industry, aluminium, fertilizer, electricity. These are those industries which are very intensive in terms of emissions, carbon emissions. So if anyone in Europe imports something from other countries related to these items from these industries, then we are going to put extra tax on them, or will punish them to some extent. So what they say, that you should purchase some CBAM certificate whenever you are importing something from these sectors. So if India is exporting something, then that will become costly in when it goes to European Union. Now it is not a good news for India, obviously, and this is going to be enforced by 2026. So India or developing countries do not like this carbon border adjustment mechanism brought by European Union. Now we say, sir, it's a very unfair kind of trade barrier which you have created, which it is unfair for the developing countries specifically. And this is you're doing not because you want to ensure that there should be less carbon emissions. Rather, you're doing it because you want to protect your own industries. You want to ensure that there should not be free trade, because the products from India or China, they are having price which is less than the price that is there in European Union. They can compete better, but you are putting additional tax on them by this route, and this is nothing but protectionism, trying to protect the interest of your local industries. That's why you're doing it. Now, this region, European Union, is very important for India. Why? Because Europe is India's third largest trading partner. Look at the entire Europe. Very important economically for you. And when Europe brings such kind of a law, this such kind of an extra tax, carbon tax kind of a thing, then other countries will also bring it. For example, UK is also considering to bring such a law. Canada is also thinking about it. US might be thinking. So many other countries will also follow Europe in this way. So you look at these mechanisms which are already there in the world. For example, emission trading system, carbon tax, offset mechanism, result based climate finance, internal carbon pricing. All these are just examples of how carbon pricing mechanisms are getting involved or getting established. So these are just examples which I'm trying to give you. So obviously India will not like this mechanism. China will also not like this mechanism, but Europe will certainly like it. So look at this question. The European Union's carbon border adjustment mechanism aims to, number one, prevent carbon leakage by taxing imports from countries with lower environmental standards. Yes, certainly true. and it applies exclusively to all agricultural imports from non-EU countries. We didn't talk about agriculture as such, right? So this is absolutely wrong. Only one, that is A, is the right answer. Now, the last article of the day, which is related to Pinaka rocket system. The trial has been conducted by DRDO. And today we are not going to discuss this article because we have already did that. So, on 11th November 2024, here we have discussed Pinaka rocket system. So, in the video, you'll get the link to go for this particular DNA video. So, if you want to do this article, then go for this video, right? So we'll be done with all these 5 articles for the day. Okay, so thank you so much